Should be good to go. In just a moment. Wow. Okay. Never a dull moment, and of course we've got one of my favorite guests, Larry Klayman. How are you, Larry?
Good, Jason. Happy Saturday.
I apologize for that rough start there. I don't know what happened. The second we began, the internet totally collapsed here. But of course we're going to be speaking today, Larry, about this Horowitz IG report, which you have totally slammed as an utter piece of garbage, which I think we both agree you had predicted days ago. And there's been a lot of hope for this Horowitz report. What about it do you think is, well, give us your insights. I'm sorry, I'm just a little frazzled here making sure we've got it.
I just thought of it, actually. We can call it the Horowitz report. Horror, okay?
Right.
That's what it is. And despite the fact that you've had a number of even conservative networks hyping this thing to boost ratings, I mean, that's basically what this is about. As Woody Allen would say, this is a sham of a travesty of a mockery of a sham. I mean, that's what it is. And you cannot go through 500 pages and detail all the political influence at the FBI and the Justice Department and then say, well, it didn't infect the investigation. This is the deep state covering up for itself. I predicted it. You know, I'm an alumnus of the Justice Department. I know the way it works. I originally left many years ago in 1982 to go back into private practice, and later I founded Judicial Watch and ran for the Senate and ran Freedom Watch, of course, at freedomwatchusa.org. But I saw politics then, but it's nowhere near the way it is today. And this is simply a cover-up. It's simply a cover-up. It's the department circling the wagons. It's the deep state circling the wagons. It's the U.S. government circling the wagons to protect itself. And who walks off scot-free? Absolutely, with no repercussion. Hillary Clinton, James Comey, Robert Mueller, Barack and Michelle Obama, the intelligence chiefs under Obama, John Brennan, James Clapper, Susan Rice, who now sits on the board of directors of Netflix. I mean, there's rewards for these things, basically. Right. She's the one that did a lot of unmasking. And it's unbelievable. The American people have had it. We're at a crossroads. We have entered into, finally, the revolution. It has finally ticked past. And I hope that Fox, you know, Hannity's been skeptical about this. I give him credit. I've been critical in the past. Judge Napolitano on Fox said, my colleagues overstated this. You know, it's time that we start telling the truth here. We don't have a justice system. We don't have a Justice Department. Freedom Watch and Larry Klayman, and I'm not just scratching my own back and bragging here. There's no reason to brag because there's some really serious matters that we got to deal with in the future at great risk. But we are your Justice Department. We are all you have left. And we need to mount a citizens' army, a citizens' grand jury. We have the right, as Justice Anton Scalia said back in 1992 in a case United States versus Williams, the grand jury does not belong to the three branches of government. It belongs to the American people. You know, we didn't even have a Justice Department, Jason, until July 1st, 1870. It was the American people who meted out justice. So what I plan to do in a very serious way is to impanel a grand jury using neutral voter rolls to try these criminals, to get a retired judge or someone who is independent and neutral to pick a jury. They will come. They'll be subpoenaed to come. The defendants, they won't come, of course, and we'll have to try them in absentia in all likelihood. But we will convict them. We will have them sentenced, and we will undertake what is our lawful right of citizens' arrest, peacefully and legally. We'll see if we can have a judge enforce the sentences. But if not, the American people's we're going to need to enforce them ourselves. We have no other choice right now, short of a violent revolution. And that's going to happen because this IG report's important because it unmasked the complete corruption of the deep state, the complete corruption of the Justice Department and its lackeys in the Justice Department. This guy Horowitz, even though he's technically a political appointee, is a career person. Rosenstein, maybe we should call him Rosenkrantz, is someone who also is a political appointee but a career person, and they circle the wagons and protect themselves. And I watched the FBI director the other day, Christopher Wray, you know, really good oratory. He's finally learned how to speak. It took him a while. but I'll tell you something. It was a complete, utter disgrace, covering up for the FBI. I don't care what they say. This has infected the FBI top to bottom. There are some good agents over there, but you know what? If you want to be promoted, you have to do what you're told. If you don't want to be promoted, they'll put you on trash bins. You talk about dereliction of duty. Let me tell you something. I was derelict in my duty at the Justice Department. I had a chief who I thought was politically tainted. I went to the assistant chief, and I said, look, we've got to pursue this defendant in North Carolina who broke bond and sent carcinogenic children's sleepwear to Venezuela so Venezuelan kids could get cancer.
Wow.
And the Consumer Product Safety Commission had banned Tris, a product which actually they had regulated at first to prevent fires, children's sleepwear. And I said, we've got to take action here. And, you know, dereliction of duty, when you're doing your duty, there's nothing wrong with that. But Comey didn't do that. Comey violated the law. Comey committed criminal acts. We also now know, Jason, why he didn't pursue Hillary Clinton, why he let her off the hook. Because he was doing the same exact thing she was doing.
Right.
With a private email account. So this whole thing is a total fraud. We now see where our government is today. There is no government in terms of law and order, in terms of law enforcement. We, the American people, need to rise up. Let's use the citizens' grand juries. Let's convict these people. Let's have them sentenced. If they will not turn themselves in and we can't get a judge to order them to be incarcerated, we're going to have to legally do it ourselves in a nonviolent way. And even if they refuse to obey their convictions and their sentences, we will have made a point. And at that crossroads, the American people will decide what they have to do in this country. You know, Thomas Jefferson said that we would need a revolution every other generation. He even said, we're going to have to spill blood. I'm not advocating that. I'm advocating the contrary. I'm advocating doing it peacefully. But if we don't succeed, there will be others out there that will not do it peacefully, and this country will come apart. And that's what we're trying to avoid.
Yeah. And, you know, for a long time, Larry, Freedom Watch USA has essentially been the People's Department of Justice, almost the watchdog over the Department of Justice. So it's very important that people watching visit freedomwatchusa.org. Larry has a petition there that you can sign so that Larry can be installed as a new special counsel to investigate and prosecute Robert Mueller. Larry's got a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit that has been adjudicated just a little while ago. And of course, Judge, what was the judge's name? Emmett Sullivan.
Judge Emmett Sullivan, yeah. Let's take our hat off to him, Jason. He's a Democrat Clinton appointee, but he's an honest man. He's
Yes.
the only one I've met, you know, of the Clinton appointees who is an honest man. Let's give him credit.
Absolutely. And he's determined that by September, Mr. Mueller's Office of the Special Counsel is going to need to turn over all of its communications with the press, which, of course, Larry suspects will reveal illegal leaking and could shut down Mueller's investigation. So it's important that everybody understands that there is no one financially supporting these efforts other than you. So if you stand by freedomwatchusa.org and if you support what Larry is doing, it's important that you visit Larry's webpage and get involved and sponsor his efforts financially. You can, of course, also follow Freedom Watch USA on Twitter. They are at Freedom Watch USA, and Larry's personal Twitter page is at Larry E. Klayman. Larry, you've been talking for a while about these citizen grand juries, and I think, as you say, we've reached a point where it may be our only hope. How does something like that happen? I mean, we've seen so many things that people have been hopeful would actually bring justice to the people that are running just ripshod over our government, our judicial system, but yet again and again it seems like nothing at all happens. And there's few people out there who know the D.C. swamp as well as you. You're a 40-year veteran of Washington, D.C., and you've been fighting these swamp creatures your entire career. How would this citizens' grand jury come together, and what hope do we have that it could actually bring justice and indictments to some of these people?
It will bring justice. Let me tell you, Jason, I did it a couple years back. You'll see it on our website at freedomwatchusa.org. I impaneled one in Ocala, Florida. which is where I had my campaign headquarters for a time when I was running for the U.S. Senate in Florida in 2003, 2004. It's a very conservative area. And it's an area, it's the Bible Belt where people actually believe in morality, ethics, and God. So I thought that would be a good place to do it. And we did get convictions of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama with regard to their breaches of national security information, with regard to the leaks concerning Stuxnet, where we leaked that we had done something to the Iranian centrifuges, and Hillary and company over there at the National Security Council were leaking information about Israeli plans to take out that nuclear capability in Iran. They leaked it to try to, this was Obama telling them to do it because Obama hated and hates Israel. Obama, in my view, is an anti-Semite. He's also anti-Christian, and because we're all the same people in that regard. But Obama is at heart a Muslim. That's what he is. And so we had him indicted, and we had Hillary indicted. We convicted him, but we never sought to enforce the indictments. I thought this would be and the convictions. I thought this would be a way to educate the American people at the time, to get our Justice Department to do something, to embarrass them, to say, hey, the people can mete out justice, why can't you? But you know what? Years later, it's clear that we have no Justice Department. Now we have a Justice Department run by a so-called Republican, Jeff Sessions, who's buried his head in the sand, who's frankly a coward, who's frankly under investigation by Mueller for alleged Russian collusion and also for alleged obstruction of justice in the firing of Comey. He's an absolute disgrace. He needs to be removed. And of course you have Rosenstein underneath him, who was an Obama appointee. He was U.S. Attorney for the District of Maryland with Obama, and he's a political hack, and he's allowing Mueller to do whatever they want. And then you have these judges who sit over Mueller's prosecutions, like Amy Berman Jackson in Washington, D.C. There's only one judge who's as bad as she is, who is corrupt as she is in that court, and that's Colleen Kohler-Catelli. They're political hacks, okay? They're leftist, ultra-leftist hacks. And you've got Amy Berman Jackson rubber stamping everything Mueller wants. Yesterday, Paul Manafort's thrown in prison because he had apparently some communications with witnesses. That doesn't mean necessarily that he witness tampered. He's allowed to talk to people. And also, with regard to having him under house arrest now for almost a year, and a gag order that he can't talk to the press when the crap is being beaten out of him by MSNBC, CNN, and the other networks. That's unconstitutional. So you have this three-part cover-up. The Justice Department, you've got the judges, and you've got Congress that prances around, and they're doing some good stuff in getting information out, but they can't do anything beyond that. And most of them up there are two-faced, like Trey Gowdy and Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, even the Republicans, and nothing's going to happen up there. So we, the American people, need to now impanel these citizens' grand juries, do it in a neutral way, get people in there randomly, let them make a decision on indicting Miss Hillary, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, George Soros, Comey, Mueller, the former intelligence chiefs under Obama that have been conducting this mass surveillance. And, and then once they're tried through a petit jury, a regular jury, which will also be picked neutrally, they will be convicted, I'm sure, there's enough evidence to convict them, sentence them, and then seek to enforce those verdicts. And the American people will need to do it themselves, and now's the time we're going to have to do it. Our founding fathers, Jason, pledged their fortunes. I don't have a fortune. I have little to nothing. They pledged their honor, sacred honor, and they pledged their lives, risked their lives to form a new nation. We have to do the same thing. It's time for us to stop having pundits go on Fox News and pontificate to boost ratings, okay? I'm glad that Fox News is there, but I'm critical too, because they give false hope to the American people to boost their own ratings, to line their pockets with cash, and they're not telling the truth. I can't say these things on Fox News. That's why I'm not on Fox News, because I will say them, okay? But they don't want to stick their neck out to them, It's enough to boost ratings and make money. Right. It's time that we tell the truth, and the American people need to rise up. We need to wage a second American revolution.
Yeah, and you raise a good point, Larry. I mean, even though Fox News might appeal to some of our viewers because it's more conservative, it's still one of these, mega million-dollar operations whose agenda, frankly, is driven by its advertisers, many of which are directly linked to some of the same people that you're talking about, the Clintons, their foundation, etc. So it's important that people support Crowdsource the Truth. We're an independent news source, and we're delivering information for the people, funded by the people. Everyone can go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and become a monthly sponsor. It's really important that you do that. It's also important that you support what Larry is doing at freedomwatchusa.org. Larry is really the only lawyer who is there fighting for people's rights. And Larry, talk for a moment about what's going on with Paul Manafort. I think he's been really villainized in a way that the mainstream media is able to use him sort of as a punching bag. But yet again, here's another example of someone, this guy's home was raided. As you pointed out, he's now been stuck in jail. They've eliminated the bail for him. Why are they going after him so aggressively? And why should the average person, even if they're not a millionaire lobbyist, why should they be concerned about what appears to be growing flagrant violations of everybody's constitutional rights?
Well, let me throw the big umbrella up first. First of all, you have security agencies that have access to all of our emails, all of our telephone communications, all of our social media. When they want to use the tools that they have, they can crush and destroy anybody in this country. And in fact, Jason, I represented a whistleblower. Right now, he's just not in the mood because this was deep sixed by Comey and the others. Nobody listens. So I'm taking the ball forward here. But we know that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court was wiretapped and surveilled. We know that other justices were. We know that 156 judges were. We know that Donald Trump, when he was a businessman, yours truly, everybody, there was anybody that could challenge the deep state and the government was subject to government surveillance and crushed. They're into judges. So layer that on top of the fact that Paul Manafort, who years ago was the partner of Roger Stone and others, there was a firm called Black Manafort, Stone and Kelly. And they helped elect Ronald Reagan. They helped elect George W. Bush. At one time they were trying to get Jack Kemp elected president, some of them. And they became these Washington and lobbyists. And while I don't always approve of the way those things are done in terms of getting people elected and then calling in the chits, I obviously don't. These people were doing stuff legally at the time. Now Manafort, later on, many years later, is drafted into the Trump election campaign. And he probably was drafted in there by Roger Stone, and Roger was been a confidant of Donald Trump for many years. And I'm sure Manafort knew Trump as well. Mm-hmm. Now, he didn't do that and become a campaign manager of Trump just because he wanted more influence. That may have been the case. But he did it because he believed in it, and he believed in Trump. But what happened then? Having stuck his neck out and become the campaign manager for Trump, he became a big target of Robert Mueller because they think that he knows all about so-called Russian collusion and other illegal deeds. So Manafort is subject to Mueller's targeting. Mueller goes back as far as he can find anything that Manafort allegedly did wrong or committed a crime and indicts him for it. And it deals with registering as a foreign agent. It deals with alleged tax fraud. It deals with a bunch of other things. And Mueller is subpoenaing everybody in sight. He's also subpoenaing the president's bank records and everything else. And he conducts these basically Nazi SS-type raids on Manafort and his home, busts down the door at gunpoint, apparently, and does all kinds of other things. We've seen this with Michael Cohen, the president's personal lawyer, the same thing. So you couple that with the mass surveillance and these Gestapo tactics that are being used, and we've got a police state. We have entered into the world of King George III back in 1776, when he would bust down the doors of the colonialists, steal their property, rape their women, and do all kinds of other things, at free will. And then he took the justice system back to the court of King James. Well, that's what's happened now. They've took the justice system away from the American people. Now, Manafort's, when he's indicted in two places. He's indicted in Washington, D.C., and the case is so-called randomly assigned, and I don't necessarily believe that, to Judge Amy Berman Jackson, who's the most corrupt judge next to highly partisan, highly political. She's a witch. And Manafort asked for bail. He's willing to put up $10 million in bail. He's not a flight risk. He's not going anywhere. She keeps him under house arrest, and his partner, Rick Gates, really unkind and unconstitutional way, much like Bundy was by Judge Gloria Navarro, another hack in Las Vegas, appointed by Obama at the suggestion of Harry Reid, the most corrupt senator probably in American history. And he's kept under house arrest. Then she puts him on a gag order that he can't talk to the media, as the leftist media is beating the heck out of him, let's say the crap out of him, to be blunt. And that's unconstitutional. And now she's thrown him in prison on an allegation which gave rise to another indictment by Mueller, supersedious indictment, that somehow he's tampered with witnesses. Now, we don't know what he said to witnesses. He's entitled to talk to witnesses. You just can't tell the witnesses to testify falsely or do something improper. We don't know what went on. But without an evidentiary hearing, she throws him in jail without bail. And this is all meant to squeeze Manafort to testify falsely against the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to implicate him in Russian collusion, which in and of itself is not a crime in any event. Depends what went on. So this is what we're dealing with. Now, you have another judge out there in Virginia by the name of Ellis, I think his name is T.S. Ellis, who seems to be awake as to what's going on. He questioned Mueller's authority, but he's not made any ruling. And this is symptomatic of even the conservative judges. They are afraid of their shadow, most of them. They are establishment people. That's how they got their jobs. They're not going to stick their neck out. What does the deep state surveillance by the NSA and CIA and FBI have on them? What do they have on them with regard to tax irregularities or their personal lives? They don't want to stick their necks out either. So nobody in Washington wants to stick their neck out because they're afraid they're going to be crushed as well. And that's why you have some congressmen up there in Capitol Hill that will say things from time to time, but they don't take strong actions, because if they stick their neck out, they're going to be smeared just like President Trump has been smeared and other people have been smeared. And that's the state we live in. Checkmate.
Right.
Checkmate. Everybody is, it's just a show. And Fox News, from the conservative side, becomes the entertainment capital of the world for this. But in fact, that's all it is. And my former group, Tom Fitton, he goes on. All they do is get documents, okay? I'm trying to Freedom Watch to do what I used to do at Judicial Watch. It's time not just to get documents and get your face on TV and pound your chest like King Kong. Gee, all the great things I did. Yesterday he says he was the one who triggered Fitton, the Clinton email scandal. That was not Tom. That was the New York Times that revealed that. I mean, let's start telling the truth to the American people. The truth is, we have to now do it ourselves, okay? Documents can be good, and I commend my former group in getting them. But beyond that, you have to do something.
Right.
And you have to actually stick your neck out. And the time is not to be timid right now. We have to be brave, like our founding fathers were.
Absolutely. And, I feel like you and I have been saying this for the entire time we've been conducting these interviews, but it cannot be overstated. I mean, this is such an egregious violation of everything that we hold dear. And see, it's interesting, Larry, because after September 11th, I think a lot of people who watch Crowdsource the Truth are aware of the Project for a New American Century and that think tank that was a very sort of neocon thing with Wolfowitz and Donald Rumsfeld and all these guys basically openly stating that, we need to take all these freedoms away from people, and there's no way to do that without a sort of modern Pearl Harbor, which was, of course, 9/11. We had the Patriot Act after that, the mass surveillance that you've been speaking about for so long. It's really now a very established, very sophisticated system that, as you say, can be used to target anyone at any time. And I think another problem is the news, whether it's CNN, MSNBC, even Fox. Everyone seems to be being tried and convicted in the court of public opinion. So if you take someone like Paul Manafort or Donald Trump or anyone affiliated with Donald Trump, because the news, CNN, Rachel Maddow, New York Times, are able to foment all this hatred for these people, despite the fact that Donald Trump is the first president to speak with North Korea, initiate diplomatic negotiations, which seems like a huge step in the positive direction. A year ago today, we were fearful that a nuclear missile might be fired at California. Because they're able to foment such hatred for these people, nobody seems to mind when they get thrown in jail or when their constitutional rights are violated. But people need to be very concerned about who could be next. Could be me, could be you, could be people watching.
Well, my life's been threatened before. I had security guards at Judicial Watch, One time I came home, I had a house at Hillendale, which was a gated community. Ironically, Robert Mueller lives there, lived there then and lives there today. So did Senator Lieberman and others. Sheriff Sonny Bono. Everybody lived there. It had security, and the guard said to me, there was somebody taking pictures at your house today. He was a property appraiser, and I said, how many other people's houses were having pictures taken of them, and he couldn't answer me.
Wow.
They tried to intimidate me. Clinton's had private detectives that went, against the Clinton women who I represented, against me. I was threatened. We have to do what we need to do right now. Okay, we cannot be afraid. I am religious. I am spiritual. Que sera, sera. We got to go for the fences, Jason. And I get madder at networks like Fox News than I do at the left. We know what the left is. The left is vile. The left wants to turn us into a socialist, if not communist country, an atheist country, a radical pro-illegal immigrant, a radical pro-Muslim, a radical pro-feminist. Everything else that they want in this country, they're going all out, okay? And we, on the right, sit there and all we do is cash in on ratings on Fox News. When are we going to tell the truth that more needs to be done than just this dog and pony show? So I'm more mad at the people that are supposed to be on our side than I am on the left, because we know what the left is.
Right.
The left is vile. We're at the point where it's either them or us in terms of survival of this country, to be honest.
I agree.
And that's the way it was back in 1776. You had these Tories, who wanted to continue to affiliate with the British Crown. And that's why we had a law that said that if you're ever going to be a president, you have to be a natural-born citizen, because we didn't trust these Tories to run this country. Even Alexander Hamilton wanted to go back to the monarchy at one point with limited autonomy for this country.
Wow.
Washington said no. Okay, other people said no, we're going to stick it out. And we became a great country. But right now, you look around at the wealth of this country, we're doing well economically. President Trump's doing a fantastic job internationally. All these other things, but we're living on borrowed time. This is like sitting on the deck of the Titanic listening to music, because it can sink at any time, Jason, and that's why we don't have a lot of time here to be messing around with the bullshit on Fox News. Okay,
Right.
We got to start doing stuff right now and not just jingling the change, because this is all very entertaining.
Right. And that's really a good reason why people should be going to freedomwatchusa.org. I know a lot of people watch YouTube and they think that advertising or whatever is supporting these types of efforts, but really Freedom Watch cannot continue the type of work that it does without citizens who support Larry's efforts signing his petition so that Larry can become the new special counsel and investigate Robert Mueller, and of course financially supporting the work that's done by Freedom Watch USA. Larry, so many people, including viewers of Crowdsource the Truth, the members of the Crowdsource community, we had a lot of hope for this Horowitz Inspector General report about the wrongdoing of the members of the Department of Justice, including James Comey, including Rod Rosenstein, including all these different guys. You had accurately predicted that this would be a toothless exercise in futility. And now that the report is out, what can you tell us in specific detail? Is it possible? I mean, it's a 500 and something page report. Are there any nuggets of evidence lurking around in there? I mean, this is, as we saw when I got to experience your incredibly impressive performance in Judge Emmett Sullivan's courtroom, there are sometimes very strategic and seemingly small political and legal chess moves that can be made that will ultimately crumble, in your case, hopefully Robert Mueller's investigation. Is there anything in that Inspector General's report that could be helpful, or is it a total whitewash?
No, there is stuff that's helpful because, and that's the hypocrisy and that's the dishonesty of the whole thing, is that there are certain things that we can take and use in our citizens' grand juries that are in that report. But the conclusion that there was no political influence, the conclusion that there were no crimes committed, this lets Hillary Clinton off the hook. Okay, it lets Comey off the hook.
Wow.
It lets the intelligence chiefs off the hook. It lets everybody off the hook. It's so dishonest. And what they're basically doing is that they're saying to the American people, look, okay, so we have a report here, but you know what? We, the government, are going to do nothing about it because we're going to protect ourselves. I've said the Democrat and Republican Party is like the National Football League, the American Conference and the National Conference. They're all part of the same league. Go to Washington these days. Go to Southwest. I hadn't been there for a while. I went there with a friend about a week ago. Look at the expansion. Look at the building. Look at the cranes. Look at everything that's going on there. Why Washington, D.C.? There's no industry there. There's nothing but government and lawyers and the media. And it continues to expand like a behemoth. It's unbelievable. The money there, there's never been a recession there. Things get better during the recession. The money goes to Washington, D.C. And they just basically say, we're going to protect our little gravy train here, our big gravy train, at the expense of the American people.
Yeah.
So we have no government anymore. We don't have a government. The only thing we have is we the people. And we have a constitution. And we have a Declaration of Independence, I think the most beautiful document written short of the Bible. And I tear over when I read the thing. Read it. I ask everybody to read it and see where we are today and what our founding fathers had in mind. And that's why we the people need to rise up now. Yes, look, if I wanted to play the game, Jason, I could say what everybody else is saying. Okay, I could be on Fox News. I could be on all these networks. I would jingle the change. Freedom Watch does very well. Judicial Watch does very well because it plays the game and it gets on Fox News. I'm not jealous of that. I want to tell the people the truth. What's the name of your organization? Crowdsource the truth. We are very important. We're partners in effect because you need an alternative source. And what happened during the revolution and the days leading up? It wasn't the mainstream newspapers that were being controlled by the Tories, by those who were loyal to the British Crown. It was the printing press of Thomas Paine and others who told the truth, the pamphleteers who told the truth, who educated the colonialists, who brought them in line behind the Founding Fathers at Independence Hall, at City Tavern where they would meet at night and decide what they were going to do the next day at Independence Hall. That's my native city. I'm so proud of that. That to me, when I visit Philadelphia, that to me is the real history of this country, not Washington, D.C. There's not one building in Washington, D.C. that measures up to Independence Hall and what we created there on July 4th, 1776. So this is where we are today. Let's our heritage, no matter what your race, color, creed, sex, or whatever, we have the greatest nation ever conceived of, but we're losing it. And we, the American people, now need to actually risk our lives to save it.
Yeah, and I think people like you and I are certainly doing that. Let me bring you back for a second to this report, Larry. So the Inspector General, this is really like an oversight kind of a thing, right? Does the Inspector General, I mean, it's not necessarily a declaration of there will or will not be prosecution on any particular thing. People in the comments of this video right now, Larry, are asking, why has Sessions not done anything? You've expressed tremendous dissatisfaction with Jeff Sessions, the supposed Attorney General, who appears to be doing really sort of nothing. What can you say? Is there any chance that this report will not be the final word? I mean, I feel like there's so many reports that get generated, and they're sort of, even in the case of the legal action that's been taken against me, there's a malicious individual out there who is creating these reports, and then they can reference the report. What's our chance that this report will be shoved aside and that Trump will actually compel Jeff Sessions to continue with these investigations and the Hillary Clinton email scandal and all the crimes we had yesterday? We had Juanita Broderick, who raped by Bill Clinton, one of the most violent, horrible crimes imaginable, and Bill Clinton has been elevated to the highest possible position and received all the accolades. No conviction, no prosecution, nothing.
The problem right now is the president needs to be himself. Okay, I love this president. I think he's going to be, and I pray for his health and his safety. I think he's going to be the greatest president of our lifetime. I really do. I don't care what he says. I want to see what he does. And frankly, I like what he says most of the time because he tells it like it is. He talks like me. We're very much alike. He talks like you, okay? American people don't need sugarcoating right now, okay? Mm-hmm. But he's getting bad advice. He's continuing to get bad advice. And this IG report kind of checkmates him according to the advice that he's getting.
Really?
Because how can he now order an investigation by the Justice Department into Hillary Clinton, Comey, and everybody else when the IG, who everybody was touting as being the greatest thing since sliced bread,
right,
the legal messiah, in effect, says that no one committed crimes, okay? So the president needs to basically ignore that. He is the head of the Justice Department. He's the head of the executive branch. That's why he can appoint me special counsel or somebody like me, but there's nobody like me, unfortunately. And he can take action himself. And he needs to clean house and not worry about it. Go for the fences. Fire at least Rosenstein. Fire him. Put somebody else in there. You don't need this guy. He's a hack. He's a corrupt hack. And you don't need Sessions. He needs to go. They should ask for his resignation. Look, the Bundy case is a case study in Jeff Sessions. As you know, Jason, I asked him to review the Bundy case neutrally 2 years before the supersedious indictment was thrown out because the judge didn't want to go down with the ship when all this FBI lying and Bureau of Land Management lying came to light, and a whistleblower came forward that there were targets on the heads of the Bundys and others.
Yeah.
Jeff Sessions then said, okay, I'll review it. But 2 weeks later, he has his prosecutors move for reconsideration of the dismissal of the supersedious indictment against the Bundys. What a corrupt hack he is. He's a disgrace. He's more than a disgrace. He should be tried and convicted. And our citizens' grand juries will do that because he violated his oath of office. He's perverting the Constitution, and he's allowing his prosecutors to commit illegal acts because they were in on all the lies that were being told in that trial. So that's Jeff Sessions, okay? I think he ranks up there as one of the worst attorney generals ever. Even the ones during the Clinton administration were no worse. He's terrible. And the president, if he's not going to take control, and he's not going to because he's getting this bad advice. Giuliani, I like him and I like what he says sometimes, but basically his time has come and gone. He goes on TV. There was a report that he liquors up before he goes on Hannity.
That might have been our report, but
yeah, it may have been. Okay, I mean, stay sober, man.
Yeah.
Because you're spewing forth attorney-client information. You're digging a ditch for the president.
Yeah.
And Jay Sekulow, he's a good religious rights lawyer, but he doesn't have much criminal defense experience. And that's it right now. There are a couple lawyers in Florida, the Raskins, I think. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe their name should be changed to the Rascals. I don't know. But he's not getting good advice. And my heart bleeds for him. So the American people need to rise up ourselves. It's time that we do it again.
Absolutely. And so we've been talking about Paul Manafort, and we've been talking about the Bundys. These are guys that have been wrongly imprisoned, just thrown right in jail. In some cases, Pete Santilli has been thrown right in jail. It really seems crazy. Then we've got this guy, Imran Awan, who very probably was hacking Congress, I've now discovered that he seems to be employed by Gowan, Silva, and Winograd answering telephones. We've had firsthand witnesses who know Imran Awan identifying his voice. We've seen Jesse Winograd at the offices of Gowan, Silva, and Winograd confirming that Imran is there, essentially confirming that he's answering the phones. When I questioned him about it, he said, "What's your point?" He didn't say no. So, Larry, what are the legal implications in the case of Imran Awan? How can he be working for this Bill Clinton flunky, basically, who, by his own admission, was very competent in delivering Diet Coke, which I wonder if that's actually the sugar-free soft drink, or perhaps a coded joke at my expense at one of Bill Clinton's favorite pastimes of snorting cocaine. Is it ethical? I mean, what are the implications for the forthcoming plea hearing for Imran Awan on July 3rd, if Imran, in fact, is currently working for his defense attorney? Don't we need to know how long he's been there, and if he was, in fact, there when the U.S. Capitol Police incorrectly brought this evidence to them? Thomas Paine has said the only way that could happen would be if the defense attorneys had improperly intervened with the U.S. Capitol Police.
That's unethical to have your criminal defense client working for you, okay? Because you are in effect financing, something that may be improper. But here's the thing, Jason. This is what I say, and this is why I do understand Washington better than anybody. Honestly, I really do. Okay, I've lived it. I've lived it not just as the head of Judicial Watch and then Freedom Watch. I lived it as a private lawyer, seeing the corruption on the bench. In government, how money influences things. Why is Imran, however his name is pronounced,
Imran Awan.
What Awan? Yeah.
The
why
mystery man, Pakistani mystery man.
Why do they get him a job? Because they got to keep his mouth shut. Because he knows too much about other people. He knows too much about Wasserman Schultz. He knows too much about the Democratic Party. When I was fighting the Clintons back at Judicial Watch, all these witnesses would come in who had committed crimes, and they had just gotten promoted in their agencies. Let's get them more money to keep their mouths shut. So that's the way it works. You see, they circle the wagons. They don't want the guy to be held out to dry, and they got to make sure they don't implicate higher-ups. Okay, that's the way it works.
Right. Now, we've also heard that...
and by the way, these law firms, and I'm not making any aspersion with regard to this particular law firm, but they get their work through referrals, okay?
Right.
So they scratch the backs of the powerful and the elite in Washington by doing stuff that helps the powerful and elite cover up their crimes. Otherwise, the money spigot will be turned off.
Right. Now, the other thing that we've heard about that results in people getting money are these GoFundMe campaigns. We've heard that Mr. Wolf, who is in some legal jeopardy, has started a GoFundMe campaign to the tune of $500,000, a remarkably similar amount to what Andrew McCabe received from GoFundMe. This also seems like potentially some clandestine way or untraceable way to funnel money from, anonymous donations to these guys to sort of shut them up. What do you think about it?
Yeah, there's lots of ways to do that. Let's take a look at what the Council for American Islamic Relations is probably doing in that regard. They were an indicted co-conspirator in Dallas, Texas many years ago for their connections to terrorism and whatever. George W. Bush, an equally bad president, I might add, to anything we've seen in this century, he would go around speaking to these people. He helped promote them. He had people in his administration that had ties to CARE and to others. We look the other way because all you have to do is say, anti-Muslim discrimination, and people run away. Just like if you say anti-black discrimination or anti-white discrimination or anti-whatever discrimination, everybody buries their head in the sand. And so, yes, there's probably money being funneled by these groups into Imran Awan and others because they've done it in the past. Look at the Ground Zero Mosque that I challenged in New York City that we killed, fortunately. Okay, money was flowing into there from terrorist sources. And this was being supported by Mayor Bloomberg at the time, of all people. So this is the way this country works. It is reached a point of corruption where it's unimaginable. It's what Jefferson said would happen, and it's time to do something about it, as Jefferson said would have to be done.
And we're looking right now at the GoFundMe page for James Wolfe. So I just find it very curious that he's trying to raise $500,000. I think there's much more worthwhile causes that the money could be sent to. What's your position here on James Wolfe, Larry? What do we think about him?
I candidly haven't looked that closely into that. I've been stretched so thin lately, but I will, Jason. I'll give you my opinion next time I'm on. But
right.
Look, I mean, there's so much out there. It's like a shooting gallery, figuratively speaking, of course, when you talk about how these people need to be dealt with.
Sure.
It's unreal. It's unreal what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
And the government won't do anything about it.
Of course. And the other thing we were looking at is this article in National Review about the problems at the Department of Justice. And in many regards, this is also kind of a softening. I mean, this is all kind of like a lot of, smoke and mirrors to make people think something big just happened. And then it just blows over and, Kim Kardashian will put some picture of her ass on the internet and everybody will forget about this by Monday. Is that the move they're going for here?
I'm not sure that will fit on the internet anymore. But,
but isn't that what they're trying to do?
I had Jennifer on my radio show last week, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman. You can find it at radioamerica.com and our website, freedomwatchusa.org. I put it on YouTube. Jennifer, I was talking about when she did a centerfold for Penthouse. I was joking with her. She has a good sense of humor. And she said, well, Hillary was very jealous because her rear end could have never fit on the page.
That is a very good radio broadcast, and you've had me as a guest. I appreciate you doing that in the past. People can find Larry Klayman, Special Prosecutor, on RadioAmerica.com. It's also important that people get behind the efforts of Freedom Watch. I know I repeated several times during our interviews, Larry, but it's because I really support what you're doing. Seeing you in action in Emmett Sullivan's courtroom and just going through on the website here the cases that you have brought in the past and are currently bringing. This is the type of stuff that we want the Department of Justice to be doing. Larry Klayman and his associates at freedomwatchusa.org are essentially the Citizens Department of Justice and, of course, a watchdog over the Department of Justice. It's unbelievable the things that we're seeing happening today. I think most people should be shocked, but we're not really seeing enough outrage. So what is it that people can do other than financially supporting freedomwatchusa.org and signing your petition? What can the average citizen do? Everyone, I think, feels very frustrated. I have, of course, started this YouTube channel, but I think other people who don't necessarily have the time to do that, they're looking for answers. What can we tell them?
Well, let me just say first, I'm very appreciative to you, Jason. You're a tremendous communicator. There's nobody better. And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to express myself on Crowdsource the Truth. It's appropriately named. You are a patriot. We need more people like you. I need people, and I apologize sometimes. I can't get back to you because we're so thin. We're small. We need to get bigger. We need to have investigators, more lawyers, more media people, for that matter, more fundraisers that can bring in the resources to do what we need to do. So yes, go to freedomwatchusa.org and contribute, but also sign up to get our newsletters, to get our emails. We need to mount a citizens army, and I need to enlist you in that army for these citizens grand juries. And I'm going to try to get the ability to communicate with everybody one-on-one. Give us your phone number, give us your email. I'm going to try to do that, but we need the resources because I'm basically, with a few others, a one-man band here. Okay,
yeah.
We need bigger people. We need more people to join the Citizens Army effort, and we need to educate the American people. That's why you're important. My radio show, Special Prosecutor with Larry Klayman, is important. We're going to do more blogs, more YouTubes. We've got about 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. I hope to get it up to several 100,000 shortly, because we don't have any more time. And the crossroads here, I know we're coming to the end of this hour, and I appreciate everything that you've done. is that the crossroads here is this IG report. This unmasks it. There's a word in Italian, sputanare, dehors. It dehors what we're going through right now. Only the Italians could come up with that. It's accurate.
Of course.
It dehors the government. And that was my first book, Whores, Why and How I Came to Fight the Establishment. Mm-hmm. I'm writing a new book. I mean, it's going to be called Whores 2, They're Back. Okay? They're back with a vengeance. Okay, it's going to be like Jaws, you know, but in reverse. And I've also got a compilation of all of the columns I've ever written called Essays of a Mad Man, and you can order that on our website at freedomwatchusa.org because it tells the story from Clinton on to today, how our country has been going down the drain. And it was Adams who said, John Adams, who was also a lot like me, except he was a Federalist, so I kind of like Jefferson a little more because he was more individual rights, but I love Adams too. He said, without ethics, morality, and religion, it doesn't matter how many times you change your rulers or forms of government, you will not have a lasting liberty. And Adams was a guy, much like me. I'm not equating myself with him. I mean, he was a titan. But he took unpopular cases. You know, Bundy's was an unpopular case, but I love this family. They're right. They're true American heroes. He defended British soldiers that fired on colonialists on the Boston Common and killed them when they were provoked. He lost his law practice because he was condemned. He later became one of our greatest founding fathers and second American presidents. We need Americans like that to step forward. I want to be able to communicate with them. I want them to be part of our citizens' army. Go to freedomwatchusa.org and enlist. Okay? We don't have any more time.
And Larry, realistically speaking, what do you think we can expect in terms of a time frame for this type of citizens' grand jury? How long will it take to impanel? How long will it take to go through the proceedings? When can the average person expect to see
Good point.
Some kind of result?
We can do that, I believe, right after Labor Day. We will be rocking and rolling. And that's why we need to move quickly. We cannot wait. I'm not trying to influence elections. I've never tried to do that. I'm nonpartisan. I bring cases against Republicans, too. I never advocate as head of a public interest group to vote for anybody. But we know that Mueller and the Democrats are out there trying to influence the elections, the fall elections with regard to the Republicans. Now, look, the Republicans are worthless, essentially. I'm a registered Republican, but when I ran for the Senate in Florida, I said I was going to be an independent one, a true Republican like Jefferson. But the fact is that if the Democrats take control of the House, we will have impeachment proceedings that will grind this country to a halt, even if there'll never be a conviction. We've never convicted anybody, okay? And we need to modify the Constitution if we're going to get rid of a corrupt president, because impeachment's not going to do it. But it does grind the country to a halt. Right. And we can't afford that right now. And that's why we need to clean house. We need to clean the rat's nest. And as I said earlier, peacefully. The left is vile in this country. They are a threat to our civilization. It's either us or them. We need to prevail. It's kind of like Churchill. You know, we will fight on the beaches. We will fight in the cities. We'll fight in the air. Unconditional surrender with the radical left. There's some good people on the left, okay? But the radical left is a threat to our very survival. It's either them or us, and we must defeat them peacefully and legally before this country is destroyed.
Now, of course, by Labor Day, you will be empowered by the evidence that you'll receive through discovery in your FOIA lawsuit that you prosecuted in the courtroom of Judge Emmett Sullivan. Do you have any additional indications, or have there been any more leaks to the press? Have you had any communications with Mueller's special counsel office, or is that just not the way that type of thing works?
No, I never even had communications with Ken Starr. He was supposed to be on our side.
Wow.
These people are swamp creatures, okay? They're establishment. And, you know, when we get those documents, we'll use them in our citizens' grand juries to indict Mueller, to throw him in the slammer.
Right.
Okay, because that's a crime. Don't expect the president really to remove him because he can continue to get bad advice from his lawyers that he shouldn't push too hard. You know, wishful thinking. Every time I think in my career that we're going to get a fair decision out of a court or wherever, I'm the perpetual optimist. It doesn't happen. Even the decisions I got against the NSA, the judge flipped later.
Oh, really?
And dismissed those cases. Leon, okay? And I'm up in the appeals court. Why? Because he's been surveilled. I know that from our whistleblower. His ruling last week, the merger of AT&T and Time Warner, which owns CNN. He says at the end, he's warning the government not to take an appeal. This is one of the few good things the government's done. I was with the antitrust division. I helped break up AT&T. I was on that trial team.
Right.
We don't need concentration. We need more competition. Well, Judge Leon says at the end of his decision, he's warning the government not to take an appeal because it's wasting AT&T's monies that they're having to pay on lawyers. Are you kidding me? A multi-trillion-dollar corporation? They got to this judge, okay?
Yeah.
He's turned. He's become corrupt. He's a conservative judge. Okay?
It seems as we're driving more and more towards a corporatocracy and an oligarchy in the United States rather than a democratic republic, these corporations, the consolidation between Google and Facebook, the media, particularly this type of thing, AT&T merging with Time Warner. Now we're talking about, Time Warner controls network access in terms of cable television and the way a lot of people reach the internet. AT&T, of course, controls a tremendous swath of the mobile internet. Time Warner also owns CNN and various other media outlets. Why is this allowed to happen? Isn't this vertical integration and everything that anti-monopoly laws are there for?
Again, it's the mass surveillance. What do they have on Leon, Judge Leon? I asked him, I said, have you had communications with the NSA, CIA, FBI over these cases involving illegal surveillance? He wouldn't answer me. He just mocked me and said, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Conspiracies happen,
Right.
Excuse the French. Shit happens, okay? And the reality is that they are being blackmailed, and also people may be being paid off. Judges sometimes, I'm not saying Leon was, but there is bribery, okay? But it's never really investigated by the FBI because they need these judges to get convictions in their cases. One time in the recent past, not so recent past, Alice E. Hastings, a federal judge in Miami, was found to have taken bribes. He was impeached. What happened? Nothing happened to him. He wasn't convicted of anything, in the courts. And then he ran for Congress. He's still a congressman from Miami. This is our system. It's unbelievable. We delude ourselves into thinking we're better than other countries. At least in Italy or a country like that, they put the money in an envelope and they hand it across the desk, and they're honest about the bribery. We pretend that we're holier than thou. We're not. Well, it's time that we stop being holier than thou, and the American people need to rise up. So go to freedomwatchusa.org, join our citizens' army.
Yeah, and
let's respect the heritage of Jefferson, who said we were going to have to do this.
Right. And you mentioned what goes on in Europe. It's very important because we see people like Tommy Robinson being thrown in jail for simply reporting news on a pedophile grooming network. This is quite shocking, and I don't think has received enough attention in the American press because it seems like a short hop for us to get there. And when I see someone like Tommy Robinson go to jail for reporting on that type of crime, I think of myself, of course. Obviously, my thoughts are with Tommy Robinson and his family, but I'm concerned for myself, for Laura Loomer, for the various people that are out here, getting up in the faces of people like James Comey, Bill Clinton, even Chris Gallen.
You're taking a great risk, Jason. Look, let's go back to Pete Santilli.
Yeah.
Pete Santilli was supporting the Bundys. He was accused of all kinds of crimes because he allegedly put his vehicle in front of a federal vehicle during the standoff. That's all the guy did. Why did they indict Pete Santilli, a talk show host, to send a message to all the people in the media who are taking strong stance that they could be indicted too? That happened under Obama. That was a message to Fox News. It was a message to other networks. Don't go too far or we'll indict you. We'll find some reason to indict you.
And of course, Pete spent some time in jail. I've had several conversations with Pete. I've come to know and respect Pete, and I believe what he's been telling us. A lot of people like to troll Pete and say, oh, he's this, he's that. But so far, I haven't seen strong evidence to indicate that the accusations against Pete are true. In fact, I've seen more evidence from Pete that he is innocent of these accusations. So I like to get both sides of the story in all of these cases.
And Pete made a mistake. He pled out before the indictment was dismissed, and now he's stuck with the record of being a felon. He can't vote anymore. Okay, he's out. But what's Navarro going to do about that stuff? She hasn't done anything. She's been sitting on a lot of stuff since that trial. She's buried her head in the sand, this judge. And
but this is what they want to do, Larry, right? This is lawfare. This is where they're using the legal system, whether it's the case of, in Pete's situation, the Department of Justice using the criminal system against him, or everyone's heard about the lawsuit that's been heavily publicized, brought against me by alleged ex-CIA clandestine case officer Robert David Steele. Now, whether he is or is not currently in the CIA, this is obviously someone who is well-versed in deception, counterintelligence, etc., and he's submitted basically a worthless lawsuit. They're repeatedly getting other individuals involved. We've seen David Swigert enter multiple declarations in that case, and they're hammering me to lawyer up. Because what they want to do is, irrespective of the facts, they want to drain me financially, as they have with General Flynn. They want to enter all these ridiculous declarations as, proof or evidence or whatever in a federal court. Because just like with this Inspector General report, they write a report and the report finds no wrongdoing. So now they can say the Inspector General's report found no wrongdoing. That doesn't mean there wasn't wrongdoing.
Right.
Just as Dave Swigert enters these declarations accusing me of things.
One of the most dishonest statements in the Inspector General's report was there was no physical evidence or documentary evidence of wrongdoing. I mean, that's the reverse. Of course there was none. All the documents were destroyed.
Right.
And here's another thing. Hillary Clinton's email scandal. This charade that the government plays. The NSA has all of Hillary Clinton's emails.
Right.
Why couldn't they have been subpoenaed for a grand jury? They have everybody's email at a minimum going back 5 years. 5 years.
So do we agree, Larry, that these types of reports, whether they're independent consultants writing Department of Homeland Security reports or Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General of the Department of Justice, they write these reports so that they can have some official sort of piece of crap that they can then refer to and say, oh, well, the report says this, and it sort of strengthens it in this vague way.
Let me tell you, when we have our citizens' grand juries, we'll seek an indictment of Horowitz, for covering this up. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. These people are being paid taxpayer money to cover up crimes by their benefactors in the federal government.
Right. Well, I'm very pleased
violating their oath of office.
Right. I'm very pleased that we've seen this report now, and this question of white hat, black hat, whatever. Horowitz seems to be very decidedly a swamp creature. We have heard that in the past from Harmon Wilfred, who had some first-hand experience with Mr. Horowitz. Of course, Harmon Wilfred was thrown in an underground prison in Canada for 4 months without charges, and Mr. Horowitz personally responded to correspondence with Harmon saying that there's nothing to investigate. So the notion that a U.S. citizen could be thrown in prison without charge, both in Canada and the United States, and Mr. Horowitz would think that there's nothing to investigate, I think he is, in fact, a swamp creature. I should have prepared my Horowitz swamp monster graphic for our show. Let me see if I can find that very quickly. Larry, is there anything else you want to share with our audience before you and I wrap up our session for today?
Well, let me sum it up. We are at a crossroads in American history. This was predicted that it was going to happen. Some of our founding fathers knew it would happen at some point. Most prolific in expressing himself, maybe the greatest writer of all time politically, was Thomas Jefferson, our third president. And he forecast that we would come to this point in time. when we would have to wage another revolution, and we would have to really risk everything to save the country. We're at that point right now. And I'm seeking to use the citizens' grand juries. And this time, I'm not going to just get convictions and sentences. We're going to actually enforce them. The American people are going to enforce them. Legally, it's allowed under our Constitution. It's allowed under our laws. We don't have a Justice Department anymore. We have to realize that. So, and we don't have judges that will do it, by and large.
Swamp monsters.
Monsters. So rise up. Please go to freedomwatchusa.org. Join our citizens' army, and let us ramp up so we have the ability to communicate with you and to enlist you in this effort to save our country. Look, we can look around right now. We have a beautiful country. It's very wealthy. It's doing well. But it will collapse like ancient Rome and ancient Greece if we don't take action now. Rome, if you ever go to Rome and you see the map close to the Colosseum, it controlled nearly the entire world at that point in time. And they came crashing down. And why did they come crashing down? Corruption from within, and basically a godless society that put wealth and prosperity beyond morality, ethics, and religion. And that's why God took care of them in the end. You know, they crucified Jesus Christ, who was a Jew. He was a rabbi, okay, the truest Jew there ever was, okay? That's to unite both of our peoples here. And I'm kind of the missing link in that regard, being a Jewish Christian. But they crumbled at the truth that was being told by Jesus Christ, okay? They self-destructed. And we can all take credit for that, Christians and Jews. We did it. We did it with the strength of our beliefs. And God is on our side. I do believe God's on our side. With his divine grace, Jew and Christian, we'll put this country back together again.
Larry, I want to thank you for joining me today. It's always a pleasure to have you on the program. I appreciate your insights, your views, always good to hear. People should definitely go to freedomwatchusa.org, get involved, read through the cases, look at Larry's blog. You can see all of our videos and other interviews that Larry is doing there. You can listen to his radio show there, Larry Klayman, Special Prosecutor. You can donate to freedomwatchusa.org. Very important. Money, of course, is the fuel that drives any effort, and all of this legal work is very expensive. Larry is traveling around the country doing all kinds of things to protect the freedom of the Bundys, to protect our rights as citizens. I also want to remind people watching, if you're watching daily and you're not a sponsor of Crowdsource the Truth, please go to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Become a monthly sponsor. Even if it's for $1, we're approaching 60,000 subscribers on YouTube. And of course, we will have live streaming back on the main Crowdsource the Truth channel. That's going to be tomorrow or Monday. Crowdsource the Truth remains under attack at all angles, on the internet, in the real world, with false accusations of crime, false civil lawsuits that are taking time. They would cost a lot of money if I were to get a lawyer. I'm committed to representing myself pro se. I want to shut down these people that would use lawfare to try to stop what we're doing, to bring forward the truth, to reveal evidence of wrongdoing in the case of Imran Awan, to bring you legal experts like Larry Klayman. I want to thank Larry for joining me today. I want to thank everyone for watching. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Thanks very much. Take care, Larry.
Thank you, Jason. God bless you.
Take care. You too.